The one and only Executive Director, Mississippi Department of Transportation, Brad White. Good morning, Brad. How are you?
Good morning,
Good
Paul.
to have you, sir.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. But let me play this first of all, and this kind of sets the stage of what we are going to be talking about. Part of the interview yesterday with the Lieutenant Governor.
We have spent so much money in the last couple of years, like $2.3 billion on roads and so many dollars everywhere. I do want to take a little bit of a pause and make sure that that money is being spent well and is actually hitting the streets as it should. And I think some oversight, it's very appropriate for us to be looking over our shoulder a little bit and making sure that these funds are going in the right direction.
Are you in communication with Brad White at MDOT on that?
Often.
Okay. Is that because of anything that's happened that we don't know about?
Well, I have a basic frustration of the fact we appropriate and then a year later nothing's been done.
We can say that about a lot of things in the government.
Tell me about it. We appropriated money for a nursing school at UMMC 2 years ago. I mean, I can go around Mississippi where we've appropriated money for roads, even in cities and things that it just hasn't. The time between the vote in the Senate and the House and the time that matters get accomplished is too long for me, Paul.
How long will it take us to kind of get a feel of weaning us off of the personal income tax? That's on a personal income tax, but that's the gist of this. And I ask you, could you come in and add some clarity to that? And to that point, you said absolutely, I'd be glad to. And your take on that statement?
Sure, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. Well, first of all, the Lieutenant Governor has been probably the biggest supporter of infrastructure since I've been back at MDOT, not just of MDOT, but of me personally. I mean, he shepherded my confirmation without a hitch, and if not for the additional funds that he and Speaker Gunn, along with the legislature as a whole, appropriated and Governor Reeves signed into law, our position would be near critical, and things would look a lot different from where we are right now. And so for that, I'm very grateful. And we do have an open line of communication. I talked to him yesterday, and I don't expect that to change. That aside, MDOT is not behind schedule with our capacity program, and we can show that. And I'm happy to appear before any committee and give a full account of where we are and what we do. And my impression is, and I don't mean to speak for him, I don't think that he meant that we need more oversight as much as he means that we should be accountable, and I agree with that completely. I think that the commission and me as the director, our staff, should be held accountable to make sure that we're doing everything we can to hit the metrics that's been placed out before us and get the money to the roads as efficiently and effectively as we can. But here's a few things that's got to be understood. MDOT, while we are a state agency, we're a state agency that implements a federal program. In other words, this past session and the one before, we had two different appropriation bills that were maneuvered through the legislature. The first one was the big one. That's our main budget, all the special funds that are assigned to transportation, to the interstate and highway and bridge programs, are the federal funds that are made available to us to draw down, as well as the fuel tax and other special state funds that are directed in that. The legislature passes a bill that grants us the authority to utilize that money in the way that it's intended. Then we have a separate bill that I've been referring to as our supplemental appropriation. And that's the one where the legislature has stepped in with one-time money and has helped us kickstart the capacity program, has helped supplement the paving program, has helped fund things like emergency road and bridge, has helped give us the funds necessary to draw down the extra federal money that was made available thanks to Senator Wicker through the reauthorization of our Federal Highway Administration program. Had they not done that, that would have had to come out of the lottery program. So there was a separate bill that gave us one-time money that helped supplement and was in addition to our normal federal program. But as we spend this money, it comes along with federal rules, regulations, requirements that must be met in order to ensure that we're delivering a safe and well-constructed product to the taxpayer. And when you look at the capacity program, it was basically dormant for over a decade due to lack of funds. All of the money that MDOT was receiving, by and large, was being placed into the paving and rehabilitation and maintenance of our existing system, which is about a $65 billion asset around the state. So we weren't building new projects for the most part. Thanks to the extra federal money that Senator Wicker was able to get us through our federal reauthorization, And thanks to the supplemental and additional funds the legislature was able to give us, the commission was able to jumpstart the capacity program back again. But that also meant that we had to go back and revisit old plans. We had to go back and review environmental documents, survey work, design work, right-of-way purchase, utility relocation, and all of these pre-construction phases. It is a process that takes years from the time that a project is conceived to the time that you're able to break ground and begin building it. And unfortunately, all of that work, while very important and obviously necessary, it goes on behind the scenes. Nobody's able to see it like they are when equipment rolls up on site.
Brad, let me ask you, do you think maybe, because I've done a lot of interviews over the many years with Delbert Husband, and I mean, this is not the first time he has talked about, well, let's make sure we're getting our money's worth. That was just a wide net of not only the Department of Transportation, but all of the agencies that have received a lot of money, just making sure that the jobs are being completed or are on track.
Oh, sure. And I think he's right to do that. I mean, as I said, we should be accountable. Everybody that receives and is expending taxpayer money should be able to give an account for the manner in which we're doing it, and should be able to show that we are making progress and that it is on schedule, and I'm confident that we can do that. Unfortunately, when you're talking about large construction projects that have to be spent through a federal program, it does require patience, and you do have to play the long game, because sometimes trying to cut corners can cost you in the long run.
Now, you were with MDOT previously, and I mean, when you came back, before you went to Washington with the Senator Cochran.
Yes, I worked for Dick Hall back in the late 90s and early part of 2000.
But not in the same capacity, but in this capacity, was it almost too much to be able to gather all of this stuff in? I know the number one thing, because you and I had talked before, you wanted to do exactly what you just talked about, the efficiency, get everything together, take command of the office, find out where the contracts were, what was needed, what was not. How long did that process take, and do you think you're there yet?
I think we're getting there, but I think the department was much more efficient than what people gave them credit for. I think that if I had to point out a major flaw that the Department of Transportation had, it was more in the realm of communication. And I think that something that has been very beneficial to me that I'm not sure other directors have had is just what the Lieutenant Governor was talking about yesterday. We are in contact constantly. The Speaker of the House always had an open door policy. If the governor has questions, he or his staff are calling to get those answers. And so I think the past relationships I've had have maybe helped, grease the skids a little bit on that. But I do think that communication has increased, which has allowed understanding of our federal program and how we operate and how we have to operate has helped. But I mean, I'll give you two examples I think that was done by the legislature that has helped increase efficiency more than anything. One, all the extra money that they've given us, it doesn't just come to MDOT. We can't spend that money on offices or on cars or on salaries. It goes to accounts that are housed at the Department of Finance and Administration, specifically for paving or for capacity or for the federal match. And we draw that money down. And so the taxpayers, because of the way the legislature set it up, can rest assured 100% that 100% of the money the legislature is appropriating for those types of projects go directly to those types of projects. There's not even a avenue for those of us at MDOT to do differently. And secondly, they stopped earmarking the federal program, and that's allowed us to have more flexibility in the way that we try to maximize the federal dollars made available to us, which resulted in us being able to ask for additional obligation authority this year, which is going to give us about $100 million more than we had last year.
Hang on, because I want to continue this when we come back. Sure. Just to kudos and also to bolster what you said a few moments ago as far as relationships, because we've never had that relationship as far as communications and letting the public know exactly what's going on with the previous director in your position, and even with Butch Brown back in those days, because that was a volatile time, as you well know. So kudos to you on that one, because anytime we've called you, you've been more than willing to come and explain things, and we thank you for that. It does matter. Brad White, Executive Director, Department of Transportation, will continue. It is Brad White, Executive Director of the Department of Transportation. Brad, I have a quick shot here that I think you'll appreciate. If you started driving in 1975, you got your license at 16 years old, you'll be 64 years old now. And the reason I mention that is because this is kind of a flashback. San Francisco is considering banning right turns at red lights. Now, we have a whole generation of people who turn right on red, but they don't understand why. But when we were young, you couldn't do that. San Francisco is considering a proposal to turning right on red. It will no longer be available. If they decide to put it in effect, San Francisco will be the second largest city to ban right on red after New York City. Why they do this, I don't know, because it's a good idea. But you remember 1975, the Energy Policy and Conservation Act, which required states to allow right turns on red lights to receive federal funding in an attempt to cut down on idling cars during the oil crisis of the 70s. So if you're, like 64 years old right now and you were driving, but after that, people don't have any idea how that came to be, turning right on red. It wasn't always something that you could do.
Well, for the record, I don't remember 1975.
So there you go.
I may look like I should, but I don't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you'd be 64 years old right now, and so there are a lot of people out there who have no idea how we got to right on red, and it was not a right that you had for a long, long time, or at least not forever. So, all right, your final thoughts on this, on where we're going as far as certainly on the 2024 session. Anything that you guys are going to be bringing up on that one?
Well, I think our number one need is the same that's been communicated in previous years, is reoccurring revenue.
Yeah.
Had the legislature not stepped up the way they did the last 2 years, as I mentioned earlier, we would be at a critical path. We would not have the money to have the capacity program moving at any pace that would allow us to get work done. Our paving program is still running at a deficit with the cost of paving going up. You can look at our budget and see that we're still investing the same dollar amount into the 4 paving programs that we've been doing year after year. Only the tonnage of asphalt being used is going down because the cost have gone up.
Yeah.
And so if it had not been for the investment of one-time money, I really don't know where we would have been. But we know that sooner or later that one-time money will not be here. So the conversation about how are we going to provide for this core function of government in a sustainable way, which is what you have to have in order to be able to plan a transportation system properly, is going to be key. And I think that we have some ideas that we can promote to the legislature that would not involve a tax increase, which has been the main thing that I wanted to look at since coming back to MDOT, was trying to find a way that we could work within the existing tax structure that the state has, still provide for this core function of government in an effective and efficient manner, and not ask them to raise anyone's taxes. So hopefully we'll be able to have a very meaningful conversation this session.
The late Dick Hall and I had a lot of discussions over the years as far as that 18.5 cents should it go up. And I think that's kind of a moot point now because of EVs and hybrids, and now the dialogue is on how do we tax them appropriately and commensurate with what the gas tax is. So there's so many things out there changing because of technology and where this is going. I don't get the feel right now that we're really suffering a downturn as far as taxes are concerned because of EVs. But who knows what that's going to look like in 5 or 10 years.
Well, and I just don't think you can raise the fuel tax enough to be sustainable. You know, I mean, I think we're going to have to think outside of the box and other ways of providing reoccurring revenue that is sustainable, but also is not a further burden on the taxpayer.
Yeah. And I think everybody out there, not only in Mississippi, just about every other state, doesn't want to pull that trigger or make that decision until they have to, and they're just, hopefully that's kick it down the road a little bit, but who knows. I can also see that this EV stuff is going to cool down in the next administration, certainly if there's a Republican in the White House. And I think we're going to go back to continuing it, let the marketplace take care of it, and if there is a push, let that push be more toward hybrids as the next step. But we'll see. what happens.
Yeah, I agree. Government should be out of that.
I do thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming in and clarifying that.
I appreciate the opportunity.
You got it. Brad White, Executive Director, Department of Transportation. Mayor